What if you dug a hole straight through the earth and jumped in? At first glance, this might sound like the greatest roller coaster ride in history. Imagine standing at the edge of a perfectly vertical tunnel, stretching from one side of the planet to the other. You take a deep breath, leap in, and, well, things get complicated very quickly. The first complication is digging the hole itself. The Earth's crust is about 40 kilometers thick under the continents, and once you've blasted your way through that, you hit the mantle. The mantle is not, despite cartoons suggesting otherwise, just a big pool of molten lava you can dog paddle through. It's actually solid rock, hot enough to glow, moving slowly over millions of years. So to dig your tunnel, you'd have to drill through thousands of kilometers of superheated rock while withstanding temperatures hotter than a pizza oven and pressures so intense they'd squeeze you flatter than a sticker. For perspective, every tunnel boring machine humans have ever built wouldn't make it past the first few dozen kilometers before melting. So before you even jump, you've already invented the single most expensive and impractical construction project in history. Congratulations. But let's assume, in the spirit of these what-if questions, that you somehow finish the tunnel and it doesn't collapse instantly. Now comes the fun part, the jump. The moment you let go, gravity takes over, pulling you downward. You start accelerating, and within seconds, you're going faster than any roller coaster could ever dream of. In about a minute, you're moving at hundreds of kilometers per hour, screaming your way through the planet's crust like the world's most terrified bowling ball. As you descend, the acceleration continues. By the time you reach the halfway point, the core, you'd be traveling at nearly 30,000 kilometers per hour. That's about Mach 25, faster than any jet, faster than a meteor ripping into Earth's atmosphere. It's the kind of speed where your cheeks would flap like a windsock in a hurricane, except you wouldn't have cheeks anymore because, once again, the heat and pressure in the core would have vaporized you long before this point. But let's stay optimistic and pretend you've got some kind of magical, heat-proof, pressure-proof, oxygen-supplied spacesuit. Now here's where things get interesting. As you pass the very center of the Earth, gravity starts working against you. Up until this point, it's been accelerating you downward, but once you're past the midpoint, it slows you down again. It's like a giant cosmic playground swing. You're pulled toward the middle from both directions. With no air resistance, you'd shoot all the way to the other side, slow to stop just as you emerge from the tunnel, then fall back down again. You'd keep swinging back and forth, like a human equivalent of a grandfather clock pendulum. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Except instead of keeping time, you're keeping yourself busy until you starve to death somewhere in midair. Unfortunately, there is air in your tunnel, and that ruins the fun. As you fall, air resistance pushes against you, heating you up like a meteor. The faster you go, the more drag you feel, until eventually you stop speeding up and reach terminal velocity. Instead of Mach 25, you'll top out at something closer to 200 kilometers per hour. A lot, but nowhere near enough to make it through to the other side. You'd plunge deep into the Earth, maybe a few thousand kilometers, before friction and drag slowed you down. Then, in the world's most depressing anticlimax, you'd stop, suspended in the middle of the tunnel. With no way to climb out, you'd simply hang there until you ran out of oxygen, effectively inventing the least practical elevator in history. But let's not be so pessimistic. What if you solved the air problem by sucking it all out of the tunnel? No air, no drag, no heat, just a perfect vacuum. Now the ride really works. You jump in, accelerate all the way to the core, zip through at maximum speed, and slow down just as you reach the far side. The whole trip would take about 42 minutes from one side of the planet to the other. You could leave New York, dive in, and pop out in Australia in less time than it takes to watch a sitcom. If you kept repeating this journey, you'd oscillate endlessly, back and forth, like a human bullet in a cosmic gun barrel. There's just one more problem. The Earth is spinning. At the equator, the surface of the Earth is moving at about 1,600 kilometers per hour. If your tunnel goes straight through the center, that sideways motion means you'd smack into the tunnel walls almost immediately, splatting like a bug on a windshield. To stay aligned, you'd have to start at one of the poles, where there is no sideways motion, which means, sadly, no quick trips from New York to Sydney, unless you're willing to relocate your interplanetary subway system to the Arctic Circle. So what's the final verdict? If you dug a hole straight through the Earth and jumped in, you'd either die horribly from heat, pressure, lack of oxygen, or being pancaked into a tunnel wall. Or, with the right science fiction technology, you'd invent the strangest transportation system in history. It wouldn't be fast enough to replace airplanes, it wouldn't be cheap enough to replace trains, and it would definitely violate every international safety regulation ever written. But it would make one heck of a YouTube video. And in the end, isn't that what really matters?